Hi, this is Bonnie, and I wanted to try something a little bit different today. And I am using watercolor paper, and I'm also going to be using a couple of Fairy Hug stamps to create this. So one of the stamps I am using is called Slender Fur Set, and I'm also going to be using this bear, although you could use any of those bears, from the Beary family. Again, a Fairy Hug stamp. So the first thing that I did was I cut a piece of paper to the size that I wanted to make a card. And then I am going to set up my stamping platform, and we'll continue. Actually, I wanted to show you, this is the paper that I'm using. It's a mixed media pad, and it accepts wet and dry mediums, so it wasn't really watercolor, but it's a mixed media pad, and it's very similar to a watercolor paper. So it does have a little bit of a texture to it, but it's not a really deep texture. So the first thing I did was I decided where I wanted to put my bear, and got some stuff there. And so that's pretty much what I decided. I'm going to put him right there. It didn't really matter exactly. And it's just wherever you want to put it. So I've got him all set up. And if you remember, whenever we do the gel prints, I'm going to be doing the same type of technique, but I'm going to be doing it with a stamp. So I'm going to have to turn this around so that I can put the ink on this side in a way that I want it to look. I'm going to move this other light a little bit away so it doesn't really glare so much. And what I'm going to be using to start for the bear is I'm going to be using Distress Oxide Broken China, Mermaid Lagoon, and Evergreen Bough. And I am going to start with the darkest color, which is Mermaid Lagoon. And I am going to be using a blending brush. Smaller one, not the smallest, but small one. And all I'm going to be doing is randomly putting some ink on there where I want the ink to be. You can, choose any place. Like if you look at the one that I did, I put some dark here and up there. So it's random, but I'm really going to put the dark towards the outside of the bear to give it more of a, I guess you want to call it a little bit more of an outline. It's going to change out as we go. This is very similar to coloring with markers on your stamps, that technique. But instead, I am using a blending brush and the oxide ink. Okay, so then the next color I'm going to use is the Broken China. And I'm going to add that more to the middle, but I'm still trying to make sure I get that covered. And I'm using the same brush, so there's going to have still some of the same color on it. So it's kind of like, in a way, painting with a blending brush on your solid stamps. All right, so the back hind quarter there, I am going to be using the Evergreen Bough, or Bough. I always say that wrong. And it's going to come in from the back side. I think you can see how that's showing up on there. All right, so I've got that all set up. And it's not a really big deal waiting on that or anything. I got a little fuzzy I'm going to take off. And so the next thing I do is I just spritz it with a little bit of water. And you can see how I did that. And then for around the outside, not that it matters because it's watercolor, I'm going to wipe the extra water away from the outside on the mat. It won't really get and make any difference at this point. But I'm just trying to make it a little bit cleaner. All right, so now we get to go ahead and stamp that and see what happens. Every time you do this, it's going to be different. It's going to be one of a kind. The colors will be the same, but how it gets sprayed, and how you put it on, it'll be different. And you can see how that turned out. Okay, so I really did get a really good outline in this one, and the key to that is making sure you have a nice darker outline. I'm going to do just a little bit more on the outside of him. I'm just adding a little bit of a line. You don't have to. It's all based upon what you really want the design to be. And like I said, I'm just going to add just a little bit on the edges all the way around. Just like that. And then I am still going to spritz that and wipe that away. Okay. And now we have our first stamped image. And I think that looks really good. So now I'm going to set up to go ahead and do, I'm going to put the part where he walks, and then I'm going to come back in and do, and I'm also going to put where the moon is, and then I'll come back in and stamp the trees. I forgot my second step. My second step was to add a little bit of splatter. And in order to do that, I put all three of those inks that I just used on the bear on my medium mat, and I just sprayed that with water to make it so that it was wet enough that I could actually do splatters. And this is not one of my best things that I do, but I think I need more water. There we go. So if you can control your splatters better, you can get them where you want them to go. I'm going to do a little bit of the green. It blends in really quite well. All right, so that's all I did, and then I came back in and I put my paper towel on top, just to absorb some of that. And I think I went too quick, so I'm going to have to add more. Last time I guess I did it, I waited longer, but it still works. And it's really not necessary. This is watercolor paper. I really don't have to wait. I mean, I don't have to blot that. I want some bigger blobs on there, I think. That works. That's going to work. So just stop whenever you get to the point where you like it. And you can see I have, it almost looks like snow coming off of him. So now I'm going to do the next step and get that set up. Okay, so we're going to do some inking on the bottom so that he has something to walk on. And if you let it dry a little bit more in between, it'll probably be even better for you. I am going to be using Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide for the bottom. And this paper is a little bit different than using cardstock in how it adheres to this mixed media. So, but it still works fine. I've just noticed that there's a difference. And like I said, this is going to go ahead and be like the hill that he's walking on. Okay, and then the other thing I did was I went ahead and used a little bit of chipped sapphire just to give it a little bit more color. And it's the exact same space. I lined it up too. And I just used a chipped sapphire, not very much, just to kind of blend it in. I really like chipped sapphire because it's got a little bit of a purple-ish to it. So, and I always kind of blend that in. And I think this one's a little bit different. Like I said, they're always different every time I use them. I am going to grab a Q-tip and take some of that ink away from his one foot. I'm not going to do very much because it's going to react, but I'm going to do just a little, just to make it blend a little bit. And that usually works. I don't know if you can see, but that usually works. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is the moon. And this one, I didn't measure it ahead of time. I'll do that really quickly. It's about 3 3/4. And it is going to go up here in the right-hand corner. And I'm going to be using broken china for the first halo color. And I'm going to turn my paper so I can get to it a little bit easier. And it's, like I said, broken china. And like I said, it definitely blends a lot different than cardstock. And that's pretty simple. But this picks up the ink a lot more than the cardstock. So I'm getting that to blend in. Okay, and then I'm going to be using the chip Sapphire again, just to give a little bit more depth and color. Okay, so that's the look I'm going for that. Now I need to set up my stamping platform again so that I can put the trees and the sentiment on. Okay, so I'm setting up the tree, and this is a slender fir tree, and I've decided I want my tree to go there. I do not want my tree to be the main focus. Like if I would have stamped it in black, it would make it too much of a focus. So again, I am going to be using Distress Oxide in the same fashion that I did for the bear. But in this case, I am going to be using Hickory Smoke as a predominant color. I'm going to show you the picture. And I did add a little bit of chip Sapphire to it as well. So it's just like painting on the color. And like I said, the center part of it is the Hickory Smoke, including the trunk. And then I'm just going to come back in and add a little bit of the chip Sapphire to the edges and the trunk. And you know, you can change this out. You can use any colors, you can make it green, you could do whatever. I was just going for a more neutral look. This is just to give you an idea of what you can do with your stamps. And again, I am just going to spray that and stamp it. And wipe that a little bit back, around it. Again, it's not going to matter, but I do it. And then bring that around to stamp. And depending on what your first stamp looks like, you know, impression, you can adjust and add more. And what you know about Distress Oxide is if you even let it dry, you can even stamp another layer and even be more different, to be more creative. And I'm really pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more to the edges. I see that the edges, I want just a tad bit more there. So hopefully it didn't move too much on me because I noticed it kind of attached. because then we'll get a little bit of a blur if it did. So I'm just going to add to the inside colors just a little bit to get that definition. And I'm going to spray that again. And see what we get. Yeah, even got a little bit more ink than what I normally do, but no problem. You just tap that off and that works. So I am going to do one more tree, but before I do that, I'm going to slightly tap this off so I don't get something on it right away. All right, let's get that set up. This one's just going to come over to the side. It's almost going to be like a second generation. See if we get anything. Yeah, see, there isn't anything there to stamp like a second generation. So we have to kind of start over again. And I'm not going to do as many, make it as dark as that first one. But I am going to add a little bit of the, my first one I didn't add very much of the chipped sapphire to this second generation, but I am today. I'm going to add a little bit more to that edge. I don't know what it is. I really, really like this chipped sapphire. Okay. So we'll get that sprayed. This really doesn't take a long time to make a card like this. It's really a lot of fun. Okay. Let's see what we get. It's always fun too, because it's always kind of like a reveal. And there we go. And I think I am going to go ahead and slightly, there we go. So that's the trees. Those will dry. And now I'm going to go ahead and work on the sentiment. Now, again, I decided I didn't want the sentiment to be really prominent. So I am going to use a VersaFine Clair Morning Mist. But I'll end up probably stamping it twice because it'll be a little bit too light. Yeah, I don't think so. We're going to go ahead and just set that right in the center. You can put it wherever you want. But I like that. It works really well to remove my other stamp and clean that off. Okay, all set. And we're going to be using, like I said, the Morning Mist. And you can see why it's a little bit light. And so, again, it's because I'm stamping on the mixed media paper, and there is texture tooth to it. So it needs a second pass, a second stamp. Again, another reason why I didn't want to use the Nocturne. I didn't want it to be super dark. Well, I can see that one spot in this one. I think I'm going to do it one more time, actually, just on the Promise and the Sunset part. But I think it'll be fine. Yep, that did it. So, that is what you end up with. And that's how quick you can make these cards. And I think they work good for anybody, but I know many times people talk about wanting to have a card for a masculine card. It doesn't really have to be a masculine card, but this works really well for a masculine card. It could say happy birthday on it or anything else besides what I put. You just have to be a little bit more creative in thinking of how you can, what you want to do to add to that to make it a birthday card. So, but I think that works really good. So the only thing I'm going to be left to do right now is I'm just going to mat them and put them on a card base. So I really appreciate you stopping by today, and I hope this technique is a little bit new for you, and at least for these type of stamps, and it will be kind of fun to see what you create. So I'll have all of the information in the description below. Again, thanks for stopping by.